So we're going to start off with the Dana articulator. I want you to check that this setting in here is at 35, because that's the academic angle that we're choosing in the university for all of the condylar guidance is 35. And here the angle of the mandible is to be at 10, okay? So if you picture this setting here is the angle at which your mandible shapes in like so, and this one here is the angle of the articulating the coronoid process at the side that your mandible slides along. If you understand that, it helps you understand articulations, okay? With this articulator, once you've got that set, we're then going to set this incisal guide pin, and to set that, it's going to be at that black line in the middle of this run here. Can you see the heavy black line? That's the 0 point for this articulator. So if we have a look at this flat surface here, present the flat surface to the screw and lock that up there, your pin's going to be in the right position. Okay? So a few people not watching the screen, and this is really important stuff for this articulator. If you don't watch this, you won't be able to set your articulator, and from then on all of your adjustments to your articulator will be wrong. So I'll go through that again. So everyone on a screen, please. Eyes on a screen. We've still got people not looking. So here's your pin. Can you see the flat surface that's on the pin here? This flat surface must be presented towards the screw. And then if we go here to this heavy dark line and take it down and then adjust that, then we have this pin, incisal guide pin, in the right position. I'll go through the settings again here. This 10-degree setting on here is what we call the angle of the mandible. So everyone's jaw, if you look at me, faces in like this. This is the angle at which this shape. It would be different in everyone, but we're selecting a 10-degree angle here because that's about average, okay? Now, we have the coronoid process here, which our condyle slides down when it goes from side to side, and that's set by this setting in here, and we're going to set that at 35 degrees. In other words, when our jaw comes forward, it slides down the coronoid process, and we've got the average for that, which is 35. So they're the two settings that we have on this articulator. So you need to set your articulator like that for the rest of the time it's here, and correct. Then I've put these plates on, these magnetic plates, by positioning them over the lugs and screwing them in position. Please be careful with these plates, because we've already had 2 or 3 where the thread has been stripped. Okay, they have a very soft thread, and see this here, if we happen to get a bit of an angle when we're putting it in, it'll cross thread and it'll boo all the thread, and it'll damage your articulator. So get this positioned over the lugs, and then very carefully feel this, and it should be just easy to put on with your fingers. If you have to put any pressure on it, come and see someone, because either the thread is incorrect or you've got it cross-threaded. So don't spoil your articulator, because these will last you a lifetime if you do that. And then these plates are going to be clipped onto there. What I would do before we clip on the plates is I would take a little bit of spray oil or Vaseline. I would Vaseline this section here, because it's a magnet, it has iron in it, and it can tend to rust, okay? So for that purpose, I would take a bit of Vaseline and put it over that area right from the start, and it will last quite a while, but you won't end up with the telltale rust rim around there, okay? So that's going to protect your articulator. Then we're going to place these plates on. Now, again, to protect the plates, because you've got multiple plates in your kit, but you'll have multiple jobs on this articulator from time to time. To protect your plates, we find it best to take this aerosol oil and just put a little bit on the plate. Once you've got it there, if you take your air hose and then spread it out, you will find when you go to retrieve this plate from the case that's finished, the plaster will come out of there really nicely and you won't damage your plates, and they last for a lifetime, okay, if you look after it. So just a spray oil. Now if a bit of oil gets onto here, good thing, not a bad thing, because it protects this paint job on your articulator, and all of this means that this articulator will present well in the surgery. If a case has been shown to a patient, if this black paint job is all nice and neat, then it's going to last a lot longer and it'll be neat. So then we're going to talk about using this jig. What we've developed here is a way of putting the upper and lower model together. You need to understand that normally this will be done by the clinician taking a face bow to help us position the maxillary model correctly on the articulator. So you would get a face bow, and then you would use the face bow to position this, and then you would take the eccentric bite that they provide, turn your articulator up so that you put the bite on there and put the lower model on and set the lower model. But what we're doing for the point of this exercise is giving you an academic position with this jig so that we can go ahead and do the exercise. But do remember, this would normally, the position of your maxilla is created by the face bow registration that you're given. The face bow, remember, registers this distance from your condyle to the maxilla here. In every patient that's different, and by registering the face bow it gives that distance, and it also gives the orientation this way and locks it up. They do that by placing a fitting tray into the mouth and making it on the maxilla, and then locking it up in a tripod shape with the face bow, which you can then put onto your articulator and get the maxilla in exactly the right place so that it has the right swing this way and this way on the articulator, the same as in the mouth. A little bit complex for you to understand, but just remember that this jig is just giving us a position so we can do the exercise of setting teeth. Okay, to make this life easy, we want to end up with this lower model, the front edge of that coincidental with the front edge of your lower plate, and that will give the upper model in basically the right position on this articulator. It's different if you've got the other articulators, and I can explain that to you if you've got one of the old uni articulators. Also, to make your life easy, we would like to mark the centre of this model, and we're going to put a line down there. So I'm just going to take this and mark the centre there, and then go to the back and mark the centre, and then I'm going to lay a straight edge along there and that's going to help us line this up on the jig in the centre of the articulator. Everyone cool with that idea? The next thing is, just in case these models part company with the plaster and the base, we're going to keep these so that we can always reposition these with a little bit of super glue if we have to take these models off the plate, or if they're accidentally taken off the plate. So we need to key the models. The position of these keys is not crucial. You could put a cross in the centre. You could put them anywhere, as long as we have some locating grooves so that we can put this back if it comes off the model. Okay? So now we're going to place this in our jig. we're going to take a rubber band and secure this in position so it doesn't move. Okay, so once we have this secured in position, I'm going to put that back there. I can position this now on here using this to get the centre of the articulator, and then this occlusal plane here is to be horizontal. Okay, and there are our indicators for this. If you have a look at this, the ideal position for us to place this, the halfway point from there to there, is this top line of this serrated index here. Let's not go for this one, it's a bit low. Okay, so we're going from there, that's roughly the centre of this position. So the top... Oh, can we have a look at that? Okay, so the occlusal plane should be level with the top line there, not this heavy line here, okay? Because if you look at the position here, this distance from there to there is from there to there, okay? So it just gets in a better position. This is the idiosyncrasy of this articulator. Okay, so once we have this set up like so with the keys in there, I'm just going to put that into some water to soak for a little while so that our models aren't dry, because when we mix our plaster, if we put it on the index and then put this on there, the model will suck the moisture out of your plaster, and you won't be able to manipulate that as well and smooth it up and so on, because all the moisture is taken out of it, and it sets a little bit faster as well. So we're just going to give that a couple of minutes to soak, and in the meantime I'm going to mix up the mix for the bottom part of the bow. So just put a small amount of water in there. Now, I'll put this under here so that you can all see this. Can you see how that's quite heavy? Just going to add a little bit more moisture. We want this to be reasonably heavy so that when we put the model on there, this doesn't collapse. It's got to be able to support the two models. Can you see that it's quite thick and heavy? So then we're going to take this and we're going to put some into our index first. So the first little bit we're going to manoeuvre into the index so we get nice retention onto our plate. And then we're going to take the rest of it, and watch the little trick here is to mount this up and push it off your spatula and mount it up. Don't slop it down, which is the tendency that we carry from when we're pouring models over, which is a totally different situation. Okay, so we're going to set that up like that. Now we have our models which have been dampened. We can sit that on there and see how it's nice and firm. It's not collapsing through. Okay, so the trick to articulating is to have the consistency of this mix correct. I'm going to get that line down the centre of the articulator. I'm going to bring my bow over, and then I'm going to get down on the horizontal, and I'm going to line this up with the top of that index. So line my occlusal plane up with the top of the index. Then I'm going to check that this is the centre of the articulator. Okay, now note that this is horizontal to the bows, so they're all in line. This is down the centre. Now I'm looking at the orientation here, and I want this here to be coincidental with the front of the plate. So I need to push him back a little bit. it's slightly in front, that's not a problem on this articulator, because see this bow here, we want it to be centered over that model. So take your time to get this all correct. And once I'm happy that that's all correct, all I need to do then is to start to neaten this up. And I do that by a dragging action from the bottom without disturbing the position of my model. Okay? So taking off the excess, and what I want is a direct line from the top of the plate to the bottom of the model. I don't want it overlapping the model, and I don't want it overlapping the plate. There's two reasons for that. One is the aesthetic reason. It looks neat and precise. And the other is that if we have to take this off, which you do at the final stages of processing, it's easy for us to place a knife at the junction of the model and the plaster and remove that from there. That's a great idea, Jane, if you can get that down. So can you see that what we want is a straight line from there to the plate? Now at this stage, if I've moved reasonably quickly in my mixing, and remember it's my job to make this look easy, this won't be as easy as for you, because you might mix for a little bit too long. You might notice that as soon as I had this amalgamated, I didn't dwell with getting this plaster onto the index and moving through. So the faster you move at the beginning of the process, the more time you have at the end to clean up. Okay? And particularly around the back here, to take this excess off now, because that's the area where most people end up with their articulation being quite messy. And you can see me just smoothing this in. I've still got plenty of working time at this stage, but shortly this plaster will start to set, and then if you haven't done all of this early in the piece, then you're going to be in panic mode trying to get this to look neat. So I'm just going around and doing all this positioning of my plaster at this stage when it's still in the pre-plastic stage. Now, this is still, our mix is still in that pre-plastic stage. It hasn't started to set yet, but because I mixed it like Bricky's mortar, I can manipulate this. Then I would even go further in neatening this and just take my finger and go around and remove the excess.
Hang on, I can't find it. Where is it? There it is.
It's hard to get good hired help, isn't it? So, can you see at this stage I can fill any bits that are voids and smooth it up with my finger all the way around, and I can make sure that it's off the model and off the plate. If I introduce water at this stage, it will reactivate the reaction on the surface and it becomes sloppy and the model is likely to move. See how this is quite stable because of the quality of the mix. So take your time to get that mix right, and then you will always arrive at the end with a visually pleasant articulation, but technically correct as well. Okay, this is the life of a dental technician. If you can go into a workplace and your first articulation is like this, then your boss is going to go, whoa, straight up the impression that you give. Now I'm introducing a little bit of water now, and I get this nice glazed surface, but I don't want to be too early in doing this, because it reactivates the surface. So just now, as the reaction, the setting reaction has started, I can go around and I can smooth all of this up to a nice glassy surface. If you don't do it at this stage, you will be over there with a little bit of wet and dry paper trying to do all of this later. So it's better for you to do it now. You're less likely to damage your articulator and you will get a better finish. If you've got areas that are persistent like this here, where the model has dried out the plaster, remember I said to soak the model, this is the reason, because see that bit of plaster there has set, you're just going to take it off like so with your knife, not pressing too hard because we don't want to break this away from the key or the index below, but go around and neaten this up. Okay? Off the model. And then it's a matter of taking the water and smoothing it like so. Now I'm doing this away from the sink. Normally at this stage I'd have a little bit of running water and it would run over and take all of this off. And we normally have a little bristle brush over there, just a little paintbrush, and we go over and rinse all of that off, okay? But that will all come off quite easily because we use the oil and so on. So now I can let that set, and all I'm going to do then is to take the same kind of mix and put it onto the top here and into the index and close it up. So I'm going to now mix up another lot and do that straight away. You might wait a little while before you did this so that you're guaranteed that that won't move. Now this is a little bit dry again, so I'm just going to put a bit of water on there to soak into that. Now the mix for the top, because it's not supporting the models, doesn't necessarily need to be quite as thick and as heavy, but I still would make it reasonably heavy so that it doesn't run away from you when you're trying to position it. So now do take time to get used to these mixes and the difference between this and what you would mix to pour a model and so on. So see how this one is just a little bit more creamy, but not much. Again, as soon as I've got it amalgamated and no lumps in there, I'm going to start working with it straight away so that I've got more time to work at the end. I'm going to put it on here and let it fill those little keys that I made. And then I'm going to fill my index. And then put some excess in here. Now we're going to close over our articulator. And here's the bit where quite a few people become unstuck, is that we must just keep tapping this until our incisal pin is down on the plate at the front. If we don't do that, our bite is going to, our vertical dimension is going to be upset. So just tap that and make sure it's right down. And now that it's down, it's a simple job of just neatening that up in exactly the same way as I did the lower, sorry. So taking the excess off, only it's a lot easier here. You will see that I can see the edge of the plate and I can see the edge of the model. So I'm just going around and making sure that that plane is perfect. It's a little bit efficient there. And because the lower is quite stable, I can now pick this up and do the back and get that quite neat. Once I've got it basically in place, then going to use my dry finger, go around and smooth this, and you can see how it will fill in the voids. You can go back over them and fill them in, and you can push them up to the plate. If there's these plates have a telltale little thin area where the fins come out to the edge, and it's quite often hard to get your articulation to look nice and neat if you don't put a little bit of material over those areas. It's just one of the idiosyncrasies of this. Now, you might say, or you might see commercially, people who don't take this amount of trouble. We figured that if we can teach you to do this and internalise the neat behaviour, you will naturally, it takes no longer to be neat doing this, and you will naturally do it as part of your course, and that will make sure that under any circumstances your work is always very presentable. And I think that's an ideal situation for you to be in right from the start. It's like to change gears or something. If you learn the correct way at the beginning, it just becomes part of your behaviour every time you get into the car. So you can see that in plenty of time, I've been able to get this quite neat, and it's still not at the stage where I need to introduce water to it. It still hasn't gone into that plastic setting stage. When it does, then I'm going to smooth it up and put a glazed surface on it like this. I'm being very careful now because I'm reactivating the surface here because I'm doing it too early, but can you see how we can get it nice and smooth? So go around and do all of that. Okay, now just to recap, can you see this is at the front of the plate and this is at the front of that plate? Okay, that position there would be about ideal for this articulator. This articulator tends to be a little bit shorter here. These plates are a bit close to the condyle. That's to cater for people with small heads. It works really well, but you have to have, with models, with the patient that would have a jaw this big, we need to get that a little bit further forward. This is just an academic position chosen for this next exercise. Everyone cool with that? Any questions? I must have done that well. There's no questions. Okay. If you have questions, you can come up and ask. We'll come up and look at this, and you'll see exactly what we want. Thank you.
Great.